Today I'm going to show you how I do my UVing process in Blender, and I found a way to be pretty fast using my super sweaty gaming MMO mouse, and I want to show you that process.
Future Jags here. This is not a sponsored video. I just like the mouse and I've been using it for like 10 years. Alright, back to past Jags.
So, long story short, we have this axe that I'm working on, and if you're interested, I can share it with you. But our goal here is to make these squares on this mesh be as even as possible, and that's going to give us the highest amount of detail and resolution. And this is definitely something that you should be doing for your assets, whatever you're making for motion graphics, film, games, etc. So I want to make sure that all of my UVs are really even and nice, so we're going to start that process by going to the data tab, and if you go into your UV maps tab, you'll see that it has a UV data thing here, and we're just going to hit the minus button, and there goes the UVs, and we're going to hit A on the keyboard, and we're going to right click. We're going to go to make sure we're in edge mode, so let's go to edges, and then right click and go to clear seam. Okay, so now we're basically ready to start UVing our model. Now, before we do get started, I do want to let you know that I do use add-ons in Blender, and I will do everything that I'm going to be doing is going to be using this pie menu, and that's the only add-on I'm going to be using. Everything else is going to be using the traditional vanilla in Blender until we get to the end of the video, and I'll show you another couple plugins that I use. So long story short, when we switch from object mode to our edit mode over here, or we can just use my menu, we need to start creating some seams for our object. So to start UVing our object, first one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right view over here, and I'm going to switch to my occlude mode. I'm just going to delete everything on one side of my mesh really quick, just so that I know I can mirror this. So I'm going to make sure I select everything right down the center, like so. Make sure I don't select anything on this axis of symmetry. Oh, I do need those guys, actually. Those guys there. Those guys there. Those guys there. And that should be everything. That looks good. Alright, let's make sure we got the... Oh, we didn't get these guys. So let's go ahead and select these little guys up here. Just go from the top view, and I'm using control and right click to orbit around, select all my stuff, and hit X and delete faces. So now we only have one side of our mesh. Okay, cool. So now we're ready to start UVing this, and to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my edge mode. So you could edit mode and then edge mode, and the first thing that I do when I start trying to UV pretty much anything, especially hard surface stuff, this probably will not apply to organics, but I'll go to select, and then I'm going to scroll down to sharp edges, and then it's going to select every single edge that matches an angle of 30 degrees. Now, I am lazy, and I don't want to have to go to menus, and that's kind of why I'm making this tutorial. If you go to any menu in Blender, actually, if you right click on that option, you can go to add a shortcut or add it to quick favorites. So I actually have a shortcut on it right here. So I'm going to click on remove shortcut. Now to add our shortcut, we're going to go to our sharp edges, right click, assign shortcut. And then what I do, because I'm a sweaty gamer, is I use this button on my mouse, the 11 right here. So I select that. So now I don't have to go to that menu. I can select everything just using that mouse, and then I can go to right click and then mark seam. Now, that's also incredibly inefficient in my opinion. Imagine you're trying to UV unwrap a ton of stuff all at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and undo that, and I'm going to hit the number 6 key on my mouse here. So once I hit number 6, it will basically mark all of those edges I had selected, which is exactly what I wanted. So now, with this base unwrap, I could go ahead and start unwrapping this just as is. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A on the keyboard with all those existing seams made, and then hit the U key on the keyboard and unwrap. And honestly, that's not bad. That's getting me pretty close to where we started. So there's a couple things that I want to do to start cleaning this up. First off, I don't like some of these seams in certain areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first hit Z and then 6 to go to my solid view, so it's a little bit easier to see all of my edges. And we're going to start cleaning up some of the edges that we don't want to have seams on. So let's first go to this back piece. I'm going to hit the L key on the keyboard, and then you'll get this select link. We're going to go ahead and select normal, and what that does is it's going to select all the parts of this mesh, and then we're going to hit Control I on the keyboard and then H. So then we're only looking at this one piece. It didn't disappear, but we're only looking at the stuff, so we're not getting distracted and annoyed by everything else in our model. So there's a couple seams that I do want to clean up, and I want to make sure that we don't have seams right here. So I'm going to go ahead and left click this and then hold shift and click on this one. And because I'm going to be painting this from this angle, from an orthographic view, I actually don't want a seam here. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and go to clear seam. Now from here, again, I don't like doing the right clicking and going to menus, so instead I hit the number 4 key on my mouse here. Now, if you don't have a sweaty gaming mouse like I do, what I do recommend is finding some keyboard shortcuts on your keyboard that you can do to get this, make it easier. You could use like Alt number 1, Alt number 2, etc. Using keyboard shortcuts will make you significantly faster. I realize we don't need this face right here, so I'm going to switch to my face mode really quick, hit X, and then delete. If you don't know how to use it without a pie menu, you can just go to these buttons up here and hit and delete like that. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep this seam right here, but I also don't want this seam or this seam right here. So I'm going to go ahead and clear that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll keep those guys right there. That should be fine. And that is not bad. And now what I'm looking for is like this little stray polygon. Where is that? Why do we have a stray polygon over there? Where is that? So, so it is this guy. So what we're going to do is we cleared those seams, but we didn't unwrap it. So I'm going to hit U and then unwrap. Now, one thing that's also worth mentioning is that if you go up to this option tab up here, you can tick on live unwrap. Now from here, when we go ahead and unwrap anything, let's go ahead and maybe just select this edge by holding Alt and then left clicking, and then we hit the seam button, right click, mark seam. We can hit A, and hey, look, now we have an awesome island for this mesh. So now I'm going to go ahead and take all this stuff over here, and I'm going to hit GX and then 1. And the reason why is now I know that this is done. I don't want this in the center island right now. We're just going to go ahead and say that this is marked done, so it's not in the center space. So now I can hit Alt H on the keyboard and unhide everything, and we can go ahead and hit L on the keyboard on this piece and then hide it. We don't need it anymore. I realize that we totally lost a face right there, so I'm just going to go ahead and fix that by selecting this edge, and hit F on the keyboard. Oh, come on. Alt H. Aha! It's because it selected that weird face. All right, I don't know why I did that. That's okay. Well, we can go ahead and hide this and hit H, and yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of this. So we can see here that all these little like circular bits I have on my mesh did have a seam added, and I don't want that. Instead, I'm just going to go ahead and select those and unmark the seam. I'm going to go ahead and kind of just do that across the board, unmark seam, and go here, unmark seam, and let's see, go here, unmark seam, go here, unmark seam, and pretty much just go through and clear out any spots so that most of our islands stay as one continuous mesh. And now from here, when I'm looking at the blade, I actually don't want these seams, so I'm going to go ahead and clear that. Let's go ahead and hit L on the keyboard for our blade, and then hit Control I and then H to hide everything, and let's go ahead and look at this. So I can see that there's a couple seams here that I don't want. So for example, this seam, we can actually keep this just as is, so I'll keep that there, and then it looks like we're pretty good. I don't know if there's a seam there. I think that's actually fine, and that looks fine. That looks good. That looks good. I'm basically trying to make sure that all of my islands for my seams are all relatively we want as little seams as possible, if possible. So that should be good. So we can go ahead and hit U and then unwrap, and it looks like it's unwrapped. Now there is a mode called sync selection. I can go here and then sync my selection, or I can just hit this button right here, which is my UV sync selection. So now when I select this face over here, it's going to select this face over there. So it's a little bit easier for me to work and see. And I'm pretty okay with this. Let's take a look. Let's see. What are these guys doing? I may not need these seams. Let's see what happens if we do that. And let's see what happens if we'll keep that seam there. But yeah, and then we'll maybe take this one, unmark that seam, and then these little triangle bits must be they're these guys right here. So I don't want to have a seam right here, so I can clear that, and then I actually don't need these faces, so I'll select them, left click, and then hit X, and then delete. And then I am going to make sure that these seams stay. So it is a little island here, but if I go ahead and clear those seams, it's going to do some weird distortion thing that I don't want and I don't like. And yeah, that should be fine, but I want to make sure that we can hammer on like why we don't want this distortion. So I'll hit Z and then 2, so we can go ahead and look at our wireframe. And actually, it doesn't look that bad, but it does look like it's just maybe it's distorting a little bit. It actually may not be that bad. Maybe we could keep it. It's really just dependent on the model, but if you didn't want to keep it, I could just mark a seam right there and then mark a seam right there, and we'll just get a much easier, we can guarantee that there's no distortion there. So, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and zoom out, and holding control, middle mouse button forward and back, we'll select everything, go to UV. Now, another set of menus that I do go into and I don't use keyboard shortcuts for is pack islands. And we'll just try and pack it based on, try and fill up the space as much as possible there. And then average island scale. Typically, you should do the inverse of that. You should do the average island scale first, and then do your pack island, but it really just depends on your workflow. And from here, we're pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything, hit GX, and then 2. And the reason why is when I go ahead and hit Alt-H on the keyboard, we can now see that this blade and this back blade they now have their own set of islands or set of spaces. So we know that all that stuff is done. So now from here, I realize I need to go ahead and clear this one right there, clear that, and clear that. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these little circle bits. So I'm going to hit the L key on the keyboard, and the L key will, again, give us this menu. We can either select based on seams, so it'll select UV islands, or it'll select the entire mesh. So I'm going to select the entire mesh here. I'm going to hit Control I and then H on the keyboard. And we can see here that there's some nonsense happening. We're getting some pretty gnarly distortions because the seams here are not helping us. If we go ahead and look at our islands here, we can see here that they're kind of doing this like weird donut thing. So the easiest fix for this is just you can go ahead and hit Alt, hold Alt on the keyboard and left click, and it'll select a loop around that. And then I can just mark seam, and that will fix it pretty much completely right there. Now, I'm going to mention an add-on that I do use pretty regularly. I got this from Blender Guru and the Blender Bros, etc., and that is UV Square Grid. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my sync selection, and then I'm going to go to my edge mode and then hit L on the keyboard, and then I'm going to, with all this stuff selected, I'll hit L in my UV space with sync selection disabled. So from here, I'm going to hit the N key on the keyboard, and then I have a couple add-ons that I do use for my UVing in Blender. So this one is going to be UV squares, and this will basically take an island that we've selected and then set it to a square. So now we can hit S, scale it down, and now we're going to get a much more even spot. We can go to the same thing here. This is already fine, so that's not a big deal, and that this is now much better and easier to UV. So, all that being said, we can go to our object mode. Let's do a quick little scrub. We'll do one more piece here because I don't want to make this tutorial too long. So, we'll go back to edit mode, and then we'll hit Alt-H to unhide everything. We can see here that there's some seams on this little circular bit I have here. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this edge and select this edge. And I know that there's a seam here regardless of there being the UVs, because if I look at my material preview, we can see that there's a difference in color. That's just selecting from a different UV space. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and hold Alt and then hold Shift and Alt and select that, and then clear my seam with the number 4 key. And then I'm going to go ahead and select this edge, clear that seam, and then I'm going to go down and select this edge and clear that seam. Now, I am getting a weird, is this flipped? I think it is. Is it flipped? So fun fact, if you go to if you hit Control Spacebar on the keyboard, it'll maximize your whatever window you're on, and then we want to go to this, what is it? Yes, this one here, we're going to go to normals, and it looks like, yes. So you see how this one is red? Let's hit Z6 on the keyboard. We can see here that these arrows are pointing inside, and we want to flip that. So we're going to hit L on the keyboard and then hit Alt N and then recalculate outside or flip, and that should, there we go. Now we're all set. So it shouldn't be red if we go back to our material preview, and that's looking better. Let's go ahead and turn off our spiky bits, our normal orientation. You can also check that under this little cross section right there and turn on your face orientation. See how it's red? I did some menu stuff to set it to red. If you'd like me to show you that, I can, but if you turn on this face orientation, it'll tell you the orientation of your faces in Blender. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt N on this guy, and I don't know why it got flipped, but that's okay. And there we go. And then this last tiny bit right here, we don't want a seam right there, so I will just select that and then mark that seam, and then I'm going to go ahead and mark this seam right here, mark seam, because that is a very significant transitional edge, and mark seam there. So that should be good. Let's hit Control Spacebar again, and then we can hit L on the keyboard to see this island. So we have the, let's go back to our sync selection, and we have L. We can see that this island down here is going to be our bottom bit, and then this island up here is our top bit. Not that one, this one. And oh, it looks like it's that one. But either way, we can just go ahead and clear that really quick by selecting this island, this seam, this seam, this seam, and this seam, and then mark, and there we go. So from here, now we're getting ready to start our UV texture process. So let's say you're getting ready and you want to start getting this into Substance Painter so you can paint it. First off, I can see that I have some red faces, which means they're flipped. So I'm going to select this island right here, hit Alt N, and then flip it. So now everything is green or gray except for this one. Let's go ahead and flip this guy as well. There we go. So I'm not going to show you the full process of UVing this thing, but I do want to go ahead and add a couple more slots. So I think that's fine. So now what I want to do is go ahead and prep this for my material. So first off, what I'm going to do is go to my material. Why did it get so tiny? Okay, fun fact that we're just going to keep in the tutorial. If you hit the plus sign or the minus sign when your mouse is over a menu, it will increase the scale and the size. So yeah, there we go. So now let's say you're ready to start doing your materials. First off, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and delete this material. I'll show you how to make the UV testing grid. So to do that, we'll hit new material and we'll call this m_uv_tut. And then we're going to go to our, we're going to add a new window. We'll go down to this corner and we'll just go ahead and with this drop down, select our shader editor. We'll hit Shift A on the keyboard. We'll type image, texture, and then we're going to go ahead and zoom in nice and close. And we'll take this color and put it in right there. And we'll hit new. And we'll call this UV_tut, whatever you want to call it. 2048 by 2048 or whatever you are feeling. We'll set this to either UV grid or color grid like so. And then now from here, if we go ahead and close this and we hit Z6 on the keyboard, Z2, excuse me, we can see that we have that UV texture versus if I go back to my shader editor and I, using Node Wrangler, hold Control, right click and drag down to cut that node, we have no material. It's just any color, but this is to help us check our UVs like so. Now from here I realized that the islands that I did push over here, they actually did get packed when I packed it earlier, but let me just show you that process really quick. So if I go ahead and select this section, and we can see here that we have all the islands of this back blade, and I'll hold or I'll just hit L on the keyboard to select this axe part again. Let's just say hypothetically we wanted to make this part a little bit bigger. What we could do is we could go to, with this selection here, go to UV and then go to pack islands and then hit pack, and it will try and fill up that space. Now what you'll notice is that these squares might be a little bit different in size relative to the rest of the mesh because it's taking up a different size of this UV space. We're also getting some overlapping islands, which you should not do. So from here, what I can do to help fix this and get rid of this gross nonsense that's over on this side is, again, hit A on the keyboard on either window, it does not matter, and then go to UV and then pack islands, and it should fill up the island space as best as it possibly can, so you shouldn't have any overlapping islands. Now I did say I do use some plugins while I do use Blender, so those plugins include the UV squares that I mentioned earlier. So we can go ahead and use UV squares and to align things to fit a rectangle if we need to, and then UV pack master is another one I do. I typically just keep it on single tile for low poly game assets or trailer assets that I'm making, so I just hit pack and it just kind of like does its best to try and fill up this UV space, and then I could be good to go. Now the final thing that we need to get this ready and prepped for Substance Painter, Blender, commercials, whatever you want to do, is we need to go ahead and prep our model so that it has geometry on both sides. So you could do this in a couple of ways. First, you could go to your modifier tab, add modifier, go to generate, and then mirror, and then we're going to go ahead and set this to the Z, no, not the Z, the Y. And then we are going to go ahead and make sure that our mirror object is going to be the dead center of our world. So I'll just go hit Shift A on the keyboard to add an empty right there, and then the mirror object should be this empty, and there we go. Now we have a mirrored UV on both sides. It will be opposite, but this means we're going to get the most textile density of our mesh. So from here, what I'm going to do is I will hold Control and then hit the A key on the keyboard to get this menu to apply and set visual geometry to mesh. So that's going to be right here. And the reason why is now our entire mesh is at its own individual piece. But if we notice, if we select this island right here, it's going to select both sides. So if I go ahead and turn off my pass through, we can see that everything on this side is backwards relative to this, but as long as you don't have any text or anything, that shouldn't be a big deal, especially for like low poly game assets. If you're doing something like for like a first person shooter, then you definitely don't want to have something mirrored. So it's a case by case basis. Now from here, I can go to my layout mode and then go to File, Export, FBX, and we'll just call this Arc Cleaver Tut, and then go to Limit to Selected Objects, and then hit OK. Export FBX, and then we can finally go to Substance Painter. So let's open up Substance, and we'll do the final little bit of texturing to get you started. Alright, so I have Substance Painter open, and I have my mesh right here along with all the saved versions of my little axe. So I'm just going to bring this to my other monitor, click and drag and bring it into Substance. We'll set the document resolution to 2K just for fun, and then we'll hit OK, and it should import. Hey, look at our beautiful axe. Amazing. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick bake, and I actually do have a high poly version, so I will go ahead and go to my croissant tab, and I will find my high poly mesh, go right here, mesh, and then high, and that should be right there. Bring this down, bake selected textures, and once that's done, set to 4K. One more time. With that done, I can go to my painting tab. We can see that we have a really cool looking bake for our 3D asset, and then we can go ahead and start adding some textures like a metal texture and find something cool. I don't know, this dark age steel might be cool. So let's just throw that on as a base. That looks pretty sick. Awesome. Cool. So that's pretty much my UV process. I hope you learned something because I'm not sponsored by Razer, but maybe one day we'll have a conversation because this thing will make your UV process significantly faster, and I hope this helps. And if you don't want to spend a ton of money on a mouse, use your keyboard, or I think Logitech makes a cheaper version. I like the Razer one though. I've been using this mouse I think for 4 years now, and I think that I've had Razer Nagas since I started playing World of Warcraft in like 2007. Oh god, I'm old. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. If you learned something, let me know in the comment section down below. Questions, comments, concerns, whatever else. Comment section is down there for that as well. And as always, I will leave you with the final tip. Eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, and you'll make some gains. Goodbye, my friends. Bye.